Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the class. In the previous class, we have discussed about the first 5-year plan and the second 5-year plan, and we have seen that the focus of the first 5-year plan was agriculture, and the economist who was behind this first year plan was K. N. Raj, and the idea which was given by him was hasten slowly. That was to, in order to attain economic growth with social justice, in order to attain economic growth with democratic values, he suggested that we must follow uh, this hasten slowly. And we have also seen that during this first 5-year plan, so many large scale projects were started like Bhakra Nangal Dam, and it was also identified in this plan that the pattern of land distribution was responsible for the low agricultural growth in our country. And subsequently, there was a focus on land reforms so that the accelerated agricultural growth can be attained. And then we have seen that there were problems also associated with the first 5-year plan because during this period the level of national income was low, and in order to raise this level of national income there was a need of rising the saving of the people, either to lower the spending of the people or to rising the saving of the people. But it was not possible to lower the spending because the spending was already very low, and the planners so the planners tried to rise the level of saving, but it was also not easy because the capital stock in the country was very low if we compare it with the total number of employable people. So, in the first 5-year plan, we see that people saving rose, but it was not as spectacular as was expected. So, after this first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan was started in 1956, and the main economist who was under whose leadership this plan was made was PC Mahalanobis, and this second 5-year plan was focused on the industrial development, and not only industrial development but it was also it was also focusing on the rapid development because it wanted to bring about quick structural transformation by making changes in all possible directions. And in 1956 only, there was a session of Congress at Awadi, that is near Madras. And in this Awadi session of Congress, the party uh, proclaimed that socialist pattern of society was its goal, and according to that socialist pattern of society, uh, many new measures has been taken in the second 5-year plan, like mm, rise in the tariff on imports, and this was done in order to protect the domestic industry. So, second 5-year plan was give a push for industrialization, and it was really a turning point in India's development. So, but some problems were also as associated with this second year 5-year plan, and the problem was technological backwardness of the country. Because of technological backwardness, what happened that uh, in order to in order to achieve the high industrial growth rate, we needed technology, and this technology was to be imported, and in this we have to spend precious foreign exchange to buy this technology from global market. And there was another problem also started because the focus was on industry, so there was possibility of food shortage was also there, because people were attracted towards industry, and investment in industry was very mm, mm, the people were able to get more return from industry if they are investing in industry. So in this way, it was it neglected agriculture, and many critics are of the view that this second 5-year plan was urban biased. It was focusing only on the industries, and it was focusing only on the needs of the urban people. And then we have discussed this bar graph also, in which we see that in agriculture and community development, in irrigation and flood control, uh, the first 5-year plan was the first 5-year plan spent more than the second 5-year plan. But in industry and mining, in transport and communication, and all these things, in all these matters, the second 5-year plan spent more than the first 5-year plan. And now we will see the key controversies. What were the controversies which arose during these 5-year plan period? We are talking about the period of 1950 to around 1965. So it's three 5-year plan period is taken into consideration, because third 5-year plan was almost similar to the second 5-year plan. So now we will see the key controversy. The first controversy which arose in this regard was the agriculture versus industry. We have discussed it earlier also that in the first 5-year plan, agriculture was the main focus of the planets, while in the second 5-year plan, industry was the main focus. So many people were of the opinion that second 5-year plan uh, gave priority only to the industrial sector, and it lacked an agrarian strategy for development. And they are of the opinion that India can become developed only by developing the agriculture. If we ignore the agricultural sector, if we ignore the rural sector, then what will happen that the country, the economic development, the benefit of economic development could not be reached to all the people, because most of the people, 67% of the people, still today we find that 67% of the people are dependent on agriculture. So in this condition, there was a lot of criticism of the second 5-year plan, that it neglected the agricultural sector. And uh, this type of development will lead uh, to economic disparity between the urban people and the rural people. And the type of development which was adopted in the second 5 year plan will only make the rich people more rich and the poor people more people, and thus it will widen the gap between the rich and the poor. So the main controversy which arose during this time was between the agriculture and industry. And in this regard, we will see that there were some uh, economists like J.C. Kumarappa, who was a Gandhian economist. He believed in the principles of Gandhi regarding economy, and he proposed an alternative blueprint that put greater emphasis on rural industrialization. So J.C. Kumarappa was uh, in favor of rural industrialization. So, what is rural industrialization? Rural industrialization means that industry should be based in rural sector, and it should be small scale. Small scale industry should be there. The raw materials which are locally available should be used, and the units, industrial units should be uh, labor intensive, so that it can generate uh, employment opportunities for the people. So rural industrialization was uh, to be given greater emphasis. It was the opinion of J.C. Kumarappa. Likewise, we see that Chaudhry Charan Singh, who was originally a member of the Congress, he was a Congress leader, but later he broke from the Congress party and formed Bharatiya Lok Dal. And he was of the opinion that the agriculture should be at the center of planning for India. No planning can be said to be complete if it is not focusing on agriculture. Planning was leading to creation of prosperity only in urban and industrial section at the expense of farmers and rural population. This was the opinion of Chaudhry Charan Singh, because uh, they were of the leaders like them were of the opinion that India can become economically developed only by developing agriculture, as the main occupation of the people in India is agriculture, and rural areas need to be developed if we really want to develop the country. So this is one of the key controversy. But there were other economists, there were other leaders who were of the opinion that industrial development is very much required if we want India to be economically developed, if we want India to remove the problem of poverty. It can be done only by industrial development. And they were of the opinion that Indian planning had an agrarian strategy to boost the production of food grains. It's not like that the 5 year plans, in the first 5 year plan or in the second 5 year plan also, there was no mm, scope for agricultural uh, strategy. There was planning for agricultural development also, because the planners wanted to boost the production of food grains, and it was in the focus also. and the state made laws for land reforms and distribution of resources among the poor in the villages. Laws were made by the government regarding land reforms. I told you earlier also that during the first 5 year plan, it was uh, observed that the unequal distribution of land is the main reason of agricultural backwardness in India. And so, if we want to improve the agricultural production, then there is need to reform the land pattern of the country. And so, it was done by the state during these 5 year plan period, and during this period it also proposed programs of community development. You can see in the bar graph we have seen that this is the percentage of spending. So in the first 5 year plan, if 15.1% was spent on agriculture and community development, in the second 5 year plan it was 11.8%. So it was not there was no attention was paid towards the need of the agricultural development or community development. The attention was paid, everything was done, but what happened that the achievements was not uh, substantial. We could not achieve uh, the objective of agricultural growth. We could not achieve the objective of land reforms. Why? Because the government was there to make policies. The policies was good, the laws were good, but there was lack of implementation. Implementation was not done in an effective manner. And this non-implementation of the policies which were aimed at land reforms and distribution of resources among the poor in the village, this non-implementation was the reason for the failure. Planning was good, but the plan, the policies, the laws could not be implemented properly. And the reason behind this non implementation was that the land owning classes had lot of social and political power. The class which were the landowners, or we can say the jamindars, who were the biggest landowners, they were not only the landowners, they have a lot of social and political influence also. And because of this social and political influence, they managed everything. And what happened that this land reform, the laws made by the government for land reforms became ineffective. And we will discuss this land reform in detail in the coming segments. So, if the government had spent more money on agriculture, it would not have solved the massive problem of rural poverty. It was the opinion of the people who supported industries. They were of the opinion that even if the government had spent more money on agriculture, it would not have solved the massive problem of rural poverty because the policies were not getting implemented. So there was no utility of spending money. And if that money is spent on industrial sector, then what will happen that it will produce good result and it will reduce the poverty of the country. So this is the controversy of industry and agriculture. Now we will move to another controversy, that is public versus private sector. I told you earlier also that India, when India became independent, there were two models of economy was present. The one was capitalist economy and the second was socialist economy. India, our country adopted neither adopted a socialist economy nor adopted a capitalist economy, but we adopted mixed economy. So elements of both the models, elements from the socialist model as well as from the capitalist model were taken and mixed together. So much of the agriculture, trade, and industry were left in private hands, and the state controlled key heavy industries, and then the state provided industrial infrastructure. The state regulated the trade and made some crucial interventions in agriculture. So this is the uh, mixed economy, in which we find that much of the agriculture, trade, and industry were left in the hands of private owners, and the state controlled what are controlled by the state: heavy industries. It provided industrial infrastructure, regulated trade, and made some crucial interventions in agriculture. So this was the model of mixed economy which was adopted by India. The mixed economy which was adopted by India was open to criticism from both the side. Both the side means from the left as well as from the right. Leftists are those who want that there should be control of government on the economy. Nothing should be left in the hands of the private ownership. And rightists are of the opposite view. They think that there must be freedom in the market. They prefer market economy, not state controlled economy. So what happened that when India adopted mixed economy, it was criticized from both the left and the right. The left criticized it. Why the left was criticizing it? It was criticizing because uh, they were of the opinion that the government is not doing enough in the economy. Whatever is expected from the government is not doing enough. This is the criticism of left. So first I am discussing the criticism which were done by the leftist people. Okay, so they these people were of the opinion that the state did not spend any significant amount for public education and healthcare. These leftist people were of the opinion that the state should spend more amount. The state should uh, involve in more economic activity, and it should provide education and healthcare facilities to the people. And it was also alleged that the state is intervening only in those areas where the private sector were not prepared to go. So, what was the allegation? The allegation was the state is helping the private sector to make profit. If there is mixed economy, then what the state is doing, the state is interfering, the state is doing those economic activities in those areas where the private sector was not ready to go. For example, in rural areas, in remote areas, the private sectors are not interested in opening any kind of unit in remote areas and rural areas because they will not get a profit in those areas. So the state intervene in those areas. So in this way, what is happening that the state is helping the private sector to make profit. So this was a great important allegation against the government, and instead of helping the poor, the state intervention created a new middle class. Because of state intervention, what was happening? There were PSU, public sector units, and in these units, the people who were employed, they were getting high salaries, and they were not so much accountable for their work. And in this way, a new middle class was created because of intervention of the state, and the poor were not helped by the government. The main aim of adopting this mixed economy was that the economy cannot be left completely in the hands of private people, because private individual will focus only on profit. Their main aim of economic activity is profit, and when they will work for profit, then what will happen, the interest of the poor will be undermined. So there is need of state intervention. So the main purpose of state intervention in economy was to help the poor, but actually that was not happening. The state was only helping the private sector to make profit. The state was because of the state intervention in economy, there created a middle class which was getting high salaries without much accountability. So we see that during this period, poverty did not decline substantially, though the focus of the government was to reduce poverty. But we see that poverty was not reducing, though the proportion of the poor reduced. If we see the percentage of the people who are below poverty line, that percentage was reduced, but their actual number was going up. So this was one of the greatest controversy of the planned economy in India. This is the view of the left. Okay, and now we will discuss the criticism which is done by the rightist people. So I have discussed left first, and now I will discuss the right. Okay, so the rightists are of the view that the state should not intervene in the matters of economy. The economy should be free, and market economy should be there. Everything should be decided according to the demand and supply factors, and other than that, nothing should be there. So these people argued that the planners refused to provide the private sector with enough space and the stimulus to grow. Because of state intervention, what was happening that the private sector was not getting freedom. There was lack of economic freedom, and the growth of economy was obstructed because of this lack of freedom. And this lack of freedom can be seen in the system of licenses. At that time, the system of license was there, the system of permit was also there, and for in order to get this license or permit, the private entrepreneurs had to um, mm, spend a lot of time, a lot of money also as a bribe in the government offices. So this was done. The system of licensing and permit was done to control the economy. This was the state intervention. But actually, this state intervention was not helping the poor in any way. It was only obstructing the economic activity, and it was only making the government officials uh, more, they were becoming more powerful. Corruption was coming. Why corruption? Because of bribery. In order to get license, in order to get permit, the private entrepreneurs used to give bribes to the government officials. So this was only hindrance and nothing else. So now this is the argument. This is the criticism given by the rightist. Then another problem was also there. The state policy was to restrict the import of goods. Those goods which can be produced in the domestic market, and those type of goods, if there is import of those type of goods, then the state was imposing duty, import duty on those goods. And what was the purpose of imposing this duty, which we discussed earlier also, okay, that the state uh, mm, imposed tariffs on the import of goods. This tariff was imposed on the import of goods so that um, mm, their cost will increase, and when the cost will increase, then what happened, that uh, not go people will not go to purchase that imported good. Instead of purchasing that imported good, people will prefer to purchase the domestic good, the indigenous good, and in this way the domestic industries will be protected. So this was the policy of the government. This was also a form of state intervention. So in this, because of this tariff on import, what happened, that the domestic, there was no competition in the domestic market, because the domestic producers were very much aware that people are not going to purchase the imported goods, because government is imposing tariff, heavy tariff on the import of the goods. So their price will rise and people will purchase the domestic goods only. So they did not pay any attention to improve the quality of their product or to make them cheaper. So this protection which was given by the government was misused, and it got misdirected. So, in this way, we see that the state controlled more things than were necessary, and this led to inefficiency and corruption. So, uh, these are the arguments which were presented by the rightist against the state intervention. So, in this way, we see these are the major controversies of the planned period. And now, in the next class, we will discuss the major outcomes of first, second, and third 5-year plan.